Hello, today in FL Studio I'm going to show you how to make a drum and bass style beat using sample breaks and the normal kick, snare and claps and hats built into FL Studio. So first of all, make a new project. Now we're going to start on the first step here on the kick. We're going to just add one there, and then we're going to go up to the 11th step and add another kick. For the snare we're going to go to the 5th step and then finally the 13th step. So that'll give you your drum and bass style beat already. You want to turn up the tempo to 175 beats per minute. Now we need to add some hats to it, so we're going to go and fill 2 steps, and that'll give it a more of a interesting element. Also add some claps on. Now I've got a break sample pack which I'm going to link to in the description, and basically you can drag that into your browser and then begin to play around with what you like. So I'm just going through them now, having a look what I like. When you find one you like, drag it on. Now click on it and go to the volume control tab. Now you need to change the attack down to 0, the hold up to all the way, the decay down, the sustain up and the release down. And this ensures that a loop doesn't play over. Now you can go onto piano roll and arrange a pattern. As you can hear, it plays along pretty well. There are ways to change the pattern, but for now we're just going to keep it that way. Now you want to try and find another break to layer on top, or perhaps find another break that you like the sound of more. So you can clone that channel and go up to the sample tab and just drag in a new one. This way you don't have to set up the volume envelope again. Now you can arrange in a piano roll and get your second sample working with the first one. This is going to bulk out the drum and bass sound even more. I'm just looking for another one just to change my original. I'm going to clone it again and also put in another sample, so I'm going to have 3 overall. You can try arranging patterns with the samples, or some of them, to give a more interesting effect. In some cases though, it might not sound as good. You might want to change it back to the normal arrangement. Be sure to pan the break samples slightly to the left and right. Maybe bring the levels down a little bit. This will help bring the dynamics out a lot more. Finally, I'm just going to look for one more drum break. Just see if I can find one with a bit more of a higher end to it. And bring the level down a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is clone the kick. We're going to do some New York compression. So make sure you've got the kick set to one channel and the other kick set to another. Now add a panoramic EQ, and what you want to do is just solo the kick, and that is the first one, and bring up the bass a little bit. Drop down the lower bass, take down the mid a bit, low mid that is, higher, take down the mid a little bit more, bring up the upper mid, and keep the treble a little bit higher. Be sure not to overdo it, and always do what sounds best to your sample if you're using different ones. Now enable the second kick And what you want to do then is add the same effect and EQ it near enough the same way. You can add a bit of variation if you want, and you might pull through some different frequencies that you didn't before, but you want to keep it near enough the same. So once it sounds good, then we're going to add Rough Rider compression onto it, and this plugin will be in description too. And play around with attack release ratio, sensitivity and makeup to get something you like. And it takes a little bit of time, but you should be seeing the gain reduction dial moving. If it isn't moving, then you're not compressing correctly. But you don't want it to be going up too high, or you're going to lose the dynamics of the sound. So keep playing around until you get something that sounds pretty much spot on. The New York compression technique uses one uncompressed track and one compressed track. What you want to do now is just start experimenting with the compression settings, and just play around with them till you get something that sounds a lot more punchier than it did before. But remember, just don't try to kill off all the sound, because you want to keep a bit of the higher end too, but not too much. Too much compression will basically make it duller than it was before, so just be careful. Now from there we can go onto our clap channel and set it to another rack in the mixer, and then what we can do is add an EQ. Now we can bring down the low end, higher up the midish and bassy a bit to the clap, bring up the mid a little bit, then a bit more toward after the mid towards the treble, bring up the treble a tiny bit. You can also take off a little bit of the mid in the middle, but only a tiny bit. Too much and you'll kill off the sound. And in some cases it can sound EQ'd, so be sure to make sure it sounds more natural. Now we can solo our hat and do the same thing, put it into its own channel and add in an EQ again. With hats, you can take off near enough all the frequencies apart from the higher treble ones. So play around and get something that you like. And what you want to do mainly is make the hats stand out more than they did before. So always make sure that your EQing is actually making it sound better than it did before. Now on your snares we can do the same thing again, and we're going to bring up the bassier part of the snare and the lower mids and the mids. We can take off a bit of a mid if we want, and it helps if you disable some of the other channels going sometimes, and bring up the treble a tiny bit, just a little bit. Too much EQ will make it sound EQ'd, so be careful. Play around until you get something you like. What you can do now is duplicate the snare and actually set it to another channel. From there you can start and add. From there you can add another EQ, and basically you want it to be EQ'd in near enough the same way as the other snare before it. You can add a bit of variation if you want, like before, but there is no need to if you don't want to. In this case, my EQ might be slightly different from before, but it's near enough the same because it's the same sample, and you can't really do much to make it sound better by changing it in different places. So from there, we're going to add compression to this one and play around with the settings. Sensitivity is a good one because that defines the threshold of what's going to be compressed. So play around with the sensitivity. Also the attack and release help with this too. The snare should sound really vibrant and punchy, just like the kick, but not exactly in the same way. It should stand out in the same way though. So you want to compare the snares together, and hopefully you should find that it's adding something to the mix and not taking something away. If it is, you need to start your process again and try to rectify the problem with the compression or the EQing. So now you can enable your breaks and just see how it sounds as a whole loop. I'm quite liking it at the moment. I'm just going to mess with the levels a little bit and have a little play around to see what works and what doesn't. Remember, you want the drum breaks to come through, but you also want your original pattern to as well.